Imagine your city is burned to the ground, not once, not twice, but over and over again, as if the world itself is trying to erase it from existence. 1238, the Mongols slaughter every soul and reduce it to ash. 1571, Crimean Tatars burn it to cinders. 1812, its own citizens deliberately set it on fire rather than surrender. 1941, the most powerful army on Earth stands at its gates, ready to finish the job. And yet, Moscow still stands, defiant, reborn, stronger every time. This is not an ordinary capital. This is a city that turned every catastrophe into fuel for empire. Welcome to the story of Moscow, the city that survived empires and shaped the modern world. Today, over 13 million people call Moscow home, a chaotic, breathtaking metropolis squeezed between the Asian steppe and European dreams. Tsars and revolutionaries, golden domes and brutalist concrete, Orthodox faith and Soviet atheism. And yet just 900 years ago, this place was nothing but thick, impenetrable forest, mosquito-filled swamps, and a handful of wooden forts on 3 lonely rivers. How did this unlikely speck on the map become the beating heart of the world's largest country and one of the most powerful cities in human history? Stay with me. This is Moscow's unbelievable, blood-soaked phoenix-like journey, a tale of fire, cunning, terror, and endless rebirth. The year is 1147. For the very first time, the name Moscow appears in a Russian chronicle. Prince Yuri Dolgoruki, ruler of the Vladimir Suzdal Principality, simply writes to an ally, "Come to me in Moscow." That's it. No grand declaration, no capital, just a tiny frontier outpost deep in the wilderness. Why here? Because 3 rivers, the Moskva, the Neglinaya, and the Yausa, meet at this exact spot. Perfect natural defense, perfect trade routes. In 1156, the first wooden Kremlin rises, nothing more than logs and earth ramparts. But this humble settlement is about to face the greatest test in its young life. 1238, Batu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, sweeps in with his golden horde. Moscow is burned to the ground. Every inhabitant who doesn't flee is slaughtered. The city becomes just another tributary of the Mongol Empire. Russian princes are forced to bow, pay crushing tribute, and beg for their lives. But here, Moscow discovers its deadliest weapon: cold, calculated cooperation. Its clever princes become the Mongols' tax collectors, hated by their own people, but rich beyond measure. Prince Ivan I, Kalita, literally money bag, hoards gold instead of waging hopeless wars. By 1325, Taras, the head of the entire Russian Orthodox Church, moves his seat to Moscow. Religion and money combine into raw power. Quietly, relentlessly, Moscow begins its climb from the ashes. 1380. Prince Dmitry Donskoy leads Russian forces to victory against the Mongols at the Battle of Kulikovo. It's not the final blow, but it's the moment Russians realize they can win. Moscow becomes the undisputed symbol of hope and unity. 1478. Ivan III, the Great, crushes every rival principality and declares himself ruler of all Rus. With Italian master architects, he rebuilds the Kremlin in stone, the fortress we still see today. After Constantinople falls to the Ottomans, a monk proclaims the idea that electrifies Russia. Moscow is the third Rome, the last true guardian of Orthodox Christianity. Politically, spiritually, and symbolically. Moscow is now unstoppable. 1547, Ivan IV, forever known as Ivan the Terrible, is crowned the very first Tsar inside the Kremlin. He centralizes power with terrifying brutality through his secret police, the Oprichnina, who dress in black and ride black horses, leaving rivers of blood. Yet Russia expands massively eastward. In 1555, the dazzling fairy tale St. Basil's Cathedral rises on Red Square, a victory monument like nothing Europe had ever seen. Then, disaster. 1598. The old dynasty dies out. The time of troubles begins. Famine, civil war, and Polish troops actually occupy the Kremlin itself. In 1612, in one of the most inspiring moments in Russian history, a citizen army led by Butcher Kuzma Minin and Prince Dmitry Pozharsky marches on Moscow. They storm the Kremlin and expel the invaders. National unity saves the state. 1613. The Romanov dynasty is born. Moscow has stared into the abyss and stepped back stronger. 1703. Peter the Great founds St. Petersburg, and in 1712 moves the capital there. Moscow is suddenly sidelined, the city of old traditions, not the shiny new future. But that very backwardness becomes its greatest strength. While Petersburg looks west, Moscow stays fiercely Russian, guardian of the church, the old nobility, and the national soul. 1812. Napoleon enters Moscow expecting total surrender. Instead, he finds a ghost city. Then, in one of history's most shocking acts of defiance, the Russians set their own capital on fire. Napoleon has no food, no shelter, no supplies. Winter strikes like a hammer. His once invincible Grand Army is annihilated on the frozen retreat. Moscow saves Russia by burning itself to the ground. The 19th century turns Moscow into an industrial powerhouse. Railways link it to the entire empire. Population explodes from 300,000 to over 1 million. 1905. The First Russian Revolution explodes with fierce barricade fighting right in the heart of Moscow. The empire shakes, but it is only the beginning. 1917. The Bolsheviks seize power. In 1918, Moscow is made capital again. Lenin moves into the Kremlin. Churches are shuttered. Palaces become government offices. Under Stalin, the city is reborn on a colossal scale. The metro becomes palaces for the people. Wide boulevards cut through old neighborhoods, and the Seven Sisters skyscrapers tower as monuments to Soviet might. In the 1930s, Stalin's Great Terror reaches its terrifying climax right here in Moscow. The infamous Moscow show trials, 1936, 1937, and 1938 put old Bolshevik heroes like Zinoviev, Kamenev, Bukharin, and Radek on stage in public spectacles. They are forced to confess to absurd crimes and are executed. Millions more disappear into the Gulag. Moscow becomes a city of fear, midnight knocks, and paranoia, yet it continues to grow into a superpower capital. 1941. Hitler's armies stand at Moscow's very gates. The city is partially evacuated, but it refuses to fall. And civilians dig trenches in the freezing mud. The metro becomes an underground fortress. The Battle of Moscow becomes Hitler's first major defeat. Moscow emerges as the unbreakable symbol of Soviet resistance. For decades, Moscow is the nerve center of the Soviet superpower, space race, nuclear standoff, Global espionage. 1991. The Soviet Union collapses. Tanks roll through Moscow again, this time against the old regime. 1993. The constitutional crisis explodes. President Yeltsin orders tanks to shell Russia's parliament. Over 150 people die in the fighting. Blood once again stains Moscow's streets. An empire ends. The city must reinvent itself yet again. Today, Moscow is a city of jaw-dropping contrasts. Futuristic Moscow city towers standing beside brutalist apartment blocks. Newly rebuilt Orthodox churches glowing beside Soviet monuments. It is once again a global power center, home to billionaires, world-class artists, tech geniuses, and dreamers from every corner of the planet. Yet it remains full of scars, contradictions, and unstoppable energy. Moscow has been burned to the ground, conquered, occupied, abandoned, and rebuilt time after time after time. And every single time, it has risen stronger, prouder, and more defiant. Perhaps that is Moscow's greatest secret. It doesn't survive despite its brutal history. It survives and thrives because of it. This is the city that shaped Russia and keeps rewriting the story of empires. Thank you for watching. Drop your favorite Moscow moment in the comments, and I'll see you in the next chapter of history.